All right, welcome to our weekly Workflow Wednesday call. This is episode 003. We are going to be going over this a little bit quicker this week and going to be building out our workflows quicker than we did on our previous episodes because I want to show you how to add automations to a status, how to build a drip and attach it to your workflow status. Okay, so last week we went over a few statuses that people wanted to see in their workflow. In their workflows. Your workflow is essentially where your pipeline is. Okay, so if we go into our agency elephant account and you're in the leads column, there's a couple buttons up here. You got your pipeline, your list, and your forecaster tool. If your pipeline looks like this, do not freak out. Simply click the view leads, and you can toggle between these two to make sure you're viewing your pipeline or viewing activity. Okay, these are people that were added in the system. You can review, hey, I want to review all my activity from inbound SMSs. This is just an activity section, but we're going to be in the lead section. Okay, now I am going to show you how to edit our workflow or edit your pipeline. And I'm going to show you where your pipeline and workflow is located. Okay, your workflow is located in your settings section. Top right of the page under the little icon, you're going to notice this is your settings. You're going to click into there, and up at the top bar, you're going to see deal status. Okay, this is our pipeline. This is where our workflow is located. Okay, in the deal status, you should have your built for you pipeline, and the pipeline name will be called default. You can always edit the name of that pipeline if you want so that it's your sales workflow, because we really promote using sales and service workflows. To add a pipeline into your account and add a new workflow, you'd simply hit add pipeline. Okay, if you already have a pipeline built and you want to change the name, you can easily do that with the pencil button. But to add a new workflow, you'd simply name it. Let's call this a sales workflow. Okay, so I'm going to build out a sales workflow really quick, and we're going to leave our service workflow as is. Now, when you create a pipeline, it is going to automatically pre-fill a few statuses for you. Okay, don't be scared. This is an easy fix. This is not what we want our sales columns to look like in our workflow. It's not how we want them to appear. So we're simply going to use our actions button to the right side of the page. Okay, the actions button has an edit option in here. Okay, so if you click action, you can click edit, and this is where you can change the name of that status. So for me, on a sales workflow, I want to see prospects that come in. So I'm simply going to change that workflow name to prospects. Okay, pretty straightforward. The next thing I'm going to want to do is make sure all of these are cleared. This is our win, abandoned, lost, unqualified statuses. You see on the bottom of the pipeline down here, you see these. We actually just changed these last night for a little bit more of an insurance jargon. Previously, it was won, abandoned, lost. You're now going to see that these are sold, quoted, and not sold. And if you don't like seeing those, just hit the little arrows and remove it. This is a new feature we added last night. We are always trying to make this system a little bit more beneficial and easier to use. Okay, so we're going to go back over to our deal status here. We're simply going to clear out this section. Okay, we're going to clear this out so that nothing is assigned to those win, abandoned, lost, or now quoted, sold, and not sold statuses that are down there. We'll make sure that these tonight get updated so that they represent what those statuses are on the pipeline, as this was a change we made last night. Okay, so let's make sure we clear all those out, and you do want to make sure that you hit yes, change it, so that it can unlink from that status. Okay, now we can see all of our statuses are unlinked, and we are going to easily update and change what we want these workflows to look like. So I want to do prospects. I want to do quoted so that I know that these people have been quoted. And I want to do also another one called sold, because this is our sales workflow. So I'm going to do a status called sold and hit update. And again, you can change these in your actions tab. Okay, so if you are following along with me, this is under your settings button, deal status in the middle of your top bar, and this is your pipeline. Okay, to add a pipeline, you simply hit the add button, and to edit the automatically pre-filled statuses, you would come over to the action button, okay? The next one that I personally would like to see from a sales standpoint is if I didn't sell it. So not sold. You could say not taken, you could say not sold, you could say missed. You can make this whatever you want. For our purposes for this call, I'm just going to put not sold. And our last one, I don't necessarily want anything after the not sold column today. So I'm just going to delete out that status, okay? Now I have over in my account, you'll see when I refresh this, I have all of my sales and some of my service pipeline here. If you come into your pipeline and you hit all pipeline and you're not seeing all of the statuses you want, or they're not appearing the way that you want in your pipeline, you simply update where those people would show over here, okay? So you can control where these people fall into the pipeline, how it visually looks in your system. If for whatever reason you are not seeing your statuses up at the top, you're going to want to come into this drop down, okay? This drop down allows you to edit what you visually see on your pipeline. I always want these all to be checked so that I know these are what I'm seeing on my pipeline. If they are all unchecked, they will show. But if you check a few ones, the ones that are not checked will not show on your pipeline, okay? This is how you edit what you can see on your prospect pipeline, okay? So I am going to make sure that we can see all of these and make sure that we can see them on our pipeline here. Now, as you can see on my sales workflow, I'm only seeing these few. Well, why are they not all appearing? Okay, and sometimes this happens in your account. You've got to make sure that all of this gets refreshed, okay? So we've got our sales workflow. They're all assigned to the sales workflow pipeline, right? We have to make sure they're all assigned. These are all service. We're going to come back over to our leads column over here and make sure they are appearing. Again, if they are not, you simply have to check the box on these, okay? So I'm going to go to select pipelines, go all members, and we're going to wait for that drop down to appear. There's also the add more statuses button here that you can do on this side, okay? Now, this is our sales pipeline and our service workflow, okay? So for this call, I am going to focus on this is how to build out your sales workflow, how to build out your service workflow, okay? Quick rundown on how to do it. If you want to delete pipelines, you simply hit the delete button and it will remove that pipeline from your status. And then you can also come in here and delete out those statuses here, okay? It is very easy to update, change, remove, add, and create different statuses for your pipeline, okay? This is something you can do really quickly from your deal status. Your add status button allows you to add to the current pipelines. You can view what pipelines you have here. And again, this is going to be a little bit quicker of a walkthrough than what we did last week, okay? A little bit quicker this week, building out your workflow. I am going to change some of these statuses because not everybody uses non-sufficient funds as a late pay, but this is essentially a late pay status, okay? So I'm going to change the name for everybody so we know what it is, okay? Are we all on the same page on where to go for your workflow, how to add different statuses for an existing pipeline or an existing workflow, or how to create a new workflow? Are we all on the same page on that? Anybody need any additional direction before we get into adding automations to this? I'll wait for a second to see if anybody wants any more additional help in viewing this. No, we're good? Okay, perfect. I'm going to move on to adding an automation to a status. So for example, Adam Ryder is my beta test person in here. I'm going to put him into the inbound service column. This is a great way for a workflow. If you are running your agency like myself, or if you're running your agency like Brian just started running this week, all his inbound service requests get filtered via email or on voicemail, and he puts them into this column, okay? Any inbound service request goes here, and this is how his staff manages addressing service issues throughout the day so they don't get pulled in 16 different directions, not completing tasks efficiently, okay? If you are running an agency and you are trying to be more efficient, you need to have all of your service work hit the inbound service workflow. You do not have to immediately fix a billing problem the second that call comes in, okay? The second that email comes in. You can let that client know and you can roadmap them. Awesome, Adam, thanks for calling in regarding the billing issue. I'm going to take a look at that this afternoon. I will get back to you later today to let you know what's going on or how we resolved it or what the issue is. And I will reach back out and let you know what's going on. And you can add prospects to this area. So as people are calling in, let's say Brian calls in because he is late on his bill again. He can't pay his bills on time. So he is back in a late pay or he has a billing issue. I can come in here and say, hey, Brian, I need to add him to the pipeline for an inbound service. You can search the lead of the person that's in here. So for example, I'll do that again. Brian had an inbound service request for a billing issue. I can come into his lead profile and toggle between what workflow I need to be looking at and simply click the status to get him in here. Okay, and I'm going to say, Brian called in, has a billing issue, was charged an extra $100. Need to figure out why. Okay, this is my note for why Brian called in. Now, if you're looking at your service pipeline or your service workflow, it is going to allow you to view what your notes are. Okay, this is a great way to stack your service work so that you can address it before the end of the day and not get stuck on a 20-minute phone call that you can actually fix in 5 minutes off the phone. Okay, clicking that little confidence number, which is 21 in this case, I'll change it to 40 so you can see that changes. Clicking that little circle with the confidence meter on it will allow you to see your notes straight from this screen. Okay, now you have a running list of inbound service requests. Okay, this is how you add people as they're calling into your workflow. Now, let's say, for example, we have Matt, myself, that is late on his payment because he hasn't paid. Okay, I'm going to show you how on dragging this customer, and I'll put myself in there because I use myself as that lead, as that example. So I'll come in and I'll search myself in the account. I know Matt is late on his payment because I got a report that shows that he is late. I am going to hit new claim, or excuse me, not new claim. I'm going to hit late pay. And I'm going to put myself into this column. Okay, there is no automation attached to this yet, but I'm going to show you how to add it so that when you click update and move, it triggers late pay notifications to the customer. Okay, I'm going to show you how to trigger those based upon just clicking that late pay status. All right, so here you can see I'm over in the late pay column. I'm going to show you how to trigger that. Okay, I'm going to put myself over to inbound service so I can trigger that automation after it is built. The first thing you need to do in your built for you, you will have in your drips column in the built for you, you will have a late pay drip in this section. Okay, so you can search the campaign by late pay and it'll pull up that drip for you. Review that. If it's not what you want, you can edit it and then I'll show you how to attach it. But in this case, I'm going to build out a drip. Okay. To build out a drip campaign, the first thing I'm going to do is to go into SMS drips. I want my late pay notification to be texted to the client. And Travis, I will get to your question in just a second and how to handle that. But for this case, we're going to use late pays really quick. Okay. I want to add a drip to that status. The first thing I have to do is create the drip. Okay. If you are not going to use the built for you, the first thing I'm going to do is create a drip. In order to create a drip, you're going to come over to SMS, you're going to hit drips, and you are going to hit this little plus button to the right. Okay. This plus button is how you create that campaign. Here is your settings for that drip. So for this one, I'm going to call it late pay, and I'm going to call it late pay I could name this Matt or whoever built it, or for who it is or the agency. I'm going to just call this late pay. All right. Drips are triggered by groups. The only way you can trigger any outbound activity is with groups. Okay. So we need to create a group for late pays because, as you can see, I do not have a late pay group. All right. If you are a built for you and want to use the late pay BFY drip that's already in there, I will show you how to attach that to your pipeline. In this case, I am going to build it out. So the first thing I need to do is add that group. Late pays. Great, group was added successfully. Now I need to pick the group that I just added. Okay, so now my campaign is named late pay. I'm using the group for late pays, and I'm going to need to now pick a phone number. Your account should allow you to pick a phone number in the dropdown, but if you are having this issue where it's like, hey, I can't pick a phone number, this is a really easy solution, okay? Your account will allow you to do that because my account doesn't have a phone number, okay? So I'm gonna come in here and I am going to purchase a phone number really quick so I can show you how to build this out. I'm gonna come in here and I'm gonna search my area code for my office. I am going to pick this area code and I'm going to title it Matt phone, okay? Or I'm going to call it agency main phone, okay? Once that is done, I'm going to hit purchase number. This is how to purchase a phone in your account. Now that that is purchased, I'm going to sign it over here really quick so that I can attach all of my stuff, okay? Let me add stuff in here so it works. All right, now that my phones are connected, I'm going to come back over to where I was under drips, and I am going to build out my first automatic late pay drip. Okay, so I'm going to title it late pay just like I had. I'm going to pick the late pay group that I had already created, and then I'm going to come over into my constraints. I want to have a high constraint on this because if I add people into this, I want to make sure that trigger fires off no matter if I've sent 10 people into that status in the last 10 minutes. I want to make sure that it sends out. The next thing I want to do, and this is dependent upon your agency, okay? I run all of my late pays to go out at certain intervals throughout the day so that I control my day, okay? Use these constraints to your benefit. I do not want to send out a notification to Brian immediately at 9 a.m. that he needs to pay his bill because I don't want to pick up the phone call and make a billing payment at 9 a.m. I want to schedule my day out, okay? So this is how you do it. Personally, I like to do all of my billing in the afternoon, and I'm going to schedule it between the hours of 2:45 p.m. So I'm going to come over into here and I'm going to type in 02, if it'll let me. Give me just a sec. I'm going to type 02 and I'm going to pick 45. I'm going to start at 2:45 in the afternoon, and I don't want to send any text messages after 5 p.m. Okay. I'm going to let this run every day of the week except Saturdays and Sundays, and I do not want to send late pay notifications over a holiday. Click that you read the disclaimer, and now I'm only going to be sending messages during these intervals. Okay. Make sure you remember what intervals you chose. Okay, now before I build this strip, I'm going to answer a couple questions here. How do you prevent, this is from Travis, how do you prevent someone that I've loaded into, say, pending policy change from going to lead when they respond to the text? In your pipeline, under settings, you want to make sure that none of these statuses have a default that is green. If there is a green default, they will automatically populate into that status when they respond if they don't have a status already assigned. I have all of my statuses removed because I don't want inbound stuff to go to a status, and I don't want when I import lists to everybody default into a status, okay? That is how to make sure that doesn't happen. You simply click it and you hit yes, change. So now you can see that it's green. I do not want it green, I want it red. I want no default assigned statuses. All right. Christopher Torres, if we have people in the workflows, then add automation to different workflow categories, will those in the workflow get the automation, or do they need to be moved in and then moved back into the workflow to trigger the automation? Chris, they have to be moved in and moved back out, because when you drag somebody through your status, it is going to update and move to that status, and it is going to change anything that's in the settings at that point. It will not change it if you edit your settings after you hit this button, okay? So that is the answer for that question. You have to, on the update and move, it's going to search the account, see if there's anything that attaches to it. If there's not, it says no, and the system goes forward from there. If you add automation to it after they're already in the status, those people will not get any automations, okay? You can add the group after they're already in there. You don't have to move them out of the status and back in. I could simply add Adam into the group for that campaign if he's already in the status, okay? Pretty straightforward. Back to our drip. Now, when I drag somebody into the sales column at 9 a.m., my constraints won't allow something to send out until 2:45. So you're still going to use the day 0, which is immediately. Immediately when I drag somebody in that status, I want this message to go out. But if your constraints won't allow it to send till 2:45, your day 0 is now 2:45. If you drag somebody into that status between the hours of 2:45 and 5, it'll send it out immediately because the constraints are open. Look at it as like if you're waiting in the line at Disneyland. I can get to Disneyland Park and sit in line at 6 a.m. I can be sitting in line waiting to go into the park for 2 hours. Or if I show up at 9 a.m., I'll just walk right in. It's the same thing. They do not allow the messages to go out because the constraints are there, even if you're placed in line waiting. Okay, so if you're placed in line waiting, you'll get that message sent out at 2:45. All right, so day 0, which would be anytime between 2:45 and 5 p.m., whenever I add them in, I want to send out the message that says, hey, first name, it's Matt, your insurance agent. Looks like your payment on your insurance policy is late. Please jump online to your account to make that payment. If you have any issues, please call the office to avoid a cancellation, right? That is the first text message I want to go out between 2:45 and 5 p.m. Now that I have built that drip, now that I have built the process, I am going to go back to our deal status, okay? And that is located in settings and in your deal status. This is your workflow. I am now going to attach that automation to that status. If you see here, there's a whole bunch of options you can use here. I personally don't use these, and I'll explain why, okay? When I drag somebody who is already a customer into a status that has no automation, they are going to continue to stay as a customer. But the second I come into this actions button, under move automation configuration, this is the back end of your workflow, okay? The second that I say on update, when I move this person into the status, the second I add a group in here, like late pay, it is going to remove any other groups they are associated with, which is important to understand. If I move Matt into this status as it is now with just late pay, my customer group gets disattached from the account. That's a big deal. I want to make sure that the customer group stays, okay? Which is why I use under the actions button over on the right side of the page, the move automation configuration button, because I can use multiple group changes. Obviously, if somebody is late on a payment, they are a customer. So I want to carry the customer group with me. Does that make sense to everybody on the call? because if I left out this customer group, I am now going to move Matt into only the late pay group, and it will remove the customer group from his account. And if you're sending out hail notifications, weather notifications to all your customers, Matt will not get it anymore because he's only in late pay. Okay. So make sure that you are using multiple and you're carrying the consistent group across. Okay. Customers and late pay. Now that that is done, when I drag myself across this pipeline, okay, under leads, right? We go to leads, lead manager, make sure you're looking at your pipeline. If it looks like this, don't stress out, just hit the view leads button. Now, when I drag Matt across to the late pay and hit update and move, it is going to grab those groups and update Matt to be associated with those groups, okay? As you can see, it was added to the late pay column. Those deal statuses and moves that you have over here will carry across, okay? Now I put this in the late pay or in the claims. Let me remove this to the late pay because I put it in the wrong one. I am so sorry, people. This is what happens when Brian is out of town and doesn't tell me I'm doing something wrong. I want to make sure that the groups are in the right workflow, as you can see here, and it's on the update and move. The expiry option we will go over on another episode of workflows, okay? So now when I come over into here, put myself into a different status, when I drag myself over into late pay and hit update and move, it is going to change the groups I'm associated with. And this is why you always test things, okay? So now when I go in, I'm going to be on customers and late pays. Previously, I was in prospects, right? So testing to make sure these things are working, that you built it right, is important. And as you saw previously, when I checked those groups, I was still in prospects. So I came over to my actions tab and said, well, why? Well, because I put the groups onto the wrong workflow. Okay, now that those groups are in the right ones, everybody gets moved correctly into the groups. This is going to trigger out a message to myself at 2:45 p.m. to make that payment, okay? That is how you build a drip and attach it to a status. If you are a built for you user and you already like the late pay drip, all you're going to have to do is assign the late pay BFY to this section, okay? Make sure you click customers and you click the late pay BFY group. That will assign that automatic text to go out, but the constraints are 8 a.m. to, I believe, 5 p.m., maybe 6 p.m. So it'll send it out immediately. If you want to change your constraints or you want to edit that, you simply will duplicate out that drip to change it, okay? So if you like the drip, but you want to have better constraints, you're going to hit new drip, and you are going to duplicate that drip by using your load settings, okay? So I'm going to duplicate my late pay drip, but in this case, one, I want to make sure that my throttle is high, but I want to change my constraints like we just did on our call. I want to change it to 2:45 p.m. and I want to stop it at 5 p.m. And I'm going to send those out on the specific days. This is how you duplicate a drip to change your settings. Now that this is duplicated, if you go back to your drip section here, you'll see I have two drips here, okay? Since I duplicated the one that I wanted to change, you can either inactive it to keep the original so it doesn't fire off, or you can delete it because you duplicated and changed the constraints to what you wanted. The group stays the same, the name stays the same, you just change the constraints. The drip messaging carried over when you duplicated it, and that is under the load settings option over here. Add new drip, load settings, what drip am I duplicating? And when you duplicate it, make sure you inactive that drip that you duplicated, the original, make sure you inactive it or you delete it out entirely. Any questions? That is our 30-minute mark. We try to keep these at 30 minutes, so it's a quick video for you to watch. Any questions? I know Joey Sword asked, say you have someone that is consistently late pay, does it automatically run when you put them in that deal status again if they're already in the late pay group, or do you have to manually remove them from the group once they make their payment? I personally like to, when I am doing these statuses and doing these changes under the late pay column, which is what we will go over next week, I want to add an option on here that removes them from those groups. Okay, so this is what we'll go over next week on how to use the expiry features. So for example, after 30 days, let's call it 25 days, to make sure that if we drag them in there just prior to the 30-day mark, it still catches. I want to remove all the groups and I want to put them back into just customers, so that 25 days after they're in this status, they move to this group, so that if I update the status later, it will put them back into late pay. Okay, that is how you use the expiry option. Make sure you are using our unassigned feature here. So after Matt makes his payment, I'm going to move him to unassigned. Make sure he does that. That way he's out of my late pay column. That is one thing. I'll take Brian, I'll add him to late pay real quick to show you how to do that. If Brian makes his payment, I want to come in here, right? I'm in the account. I personally remove the group manually after he made that payment, because if I have other drips attached, I want to make sure they don't go off. I want to remove that group from his account, and then I want to unassign him from the status. That way my staff knows that late payment was taken care of. Okay, shutting off drips is as simple as removing the group, or you could have the automation do it itself on the update and move. You can always do that in the deal status move automation configuration sections. You can move them based upon timeframes. You can move them based upon groups, etc. So for example, let's take this one out. We'll use our late pay again. I'm putting people in the late pay group. Let me refresh this page because it's not grabbing the group that I already created, because it was loaded previously. This is what we just did. I can also change the status if I wanted to, but this isn't something we are going to go over this week. We will go over that next week, but that answers your question, Joey, on how to get them out of there. Okay. Hopefully that helps give you some ideas on how to automate your workflows. Hopefully you get some ideas on what to do. Start small. You can always add to that late pay drip later on. If you're saying, hey, these people aren't making that payment immediately, I want to make sure they get a couple notifications from me, you can always add to that drip, and you can always remove and change verbiage. Okay. That is our weekly Workflow Wednesday call. I hope you guys have a great afternoon and you take action on this. If you want to see something specific next week, post it in the group messenger. If you are not in the group messenger for this call, make sure you register for the event Workflow Wednesdays. You will be added to a huge group messenger where we send updates on. People help each other out in that messenger as well. You can turn off notifications so your phone doesn't vibrate all day long. Prior to our call is usually when we send out some updates. You can turn off the notification alerts in that messenger so you don't get blown up there, but you still get all of the help. All right. Hope you guys have a great afternoon, and I will talk to you guys soon.